to really succeed in keeping the world to 1.5 degrees of warming, we need to work closely in collaboration with partners in our region and globally.
So at this COP, at COP28, Monash was awarded a UNFCCC pavilion in the Blue Zone. It was the first time that's happened. We were the only university in the region, in our region, Asia Pacific, to actually be awarded a pavilion. So it's an opportunity to highlight all the work that Monash as a university does, and clearly MSDI had many representatives, part of that highlighting the work that we do in partnership across the university to deliver impact research and projects focused on climate action and supporting communities. Within the pavilion itself, it ran across the full 2 weeks. We hosted over 70 events across the 2 weeks with about nearly 10,000 visitors came through the pavilion itself. And we had about 12 to 15 different ministerial visits and delegates attending as well. It's actually really important that MSDI, I believe, really important that we attend and participate where we can. Obviously, this was a huge COP for us to be part of. We're proud of the work that we do. We do a lot of impact on the ground work across our region. And that's work we want to talk about. It's work we want to highlight. It's partnerships we want to feature. And there's more that needs to be done. And we want to be at the forefront of those discussions. With regard to the formal negotiations and the outcomes there were some pretty big ones. Obviously, the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund, which also came with a $700 million pledge, which falls far short of the $600 billion that's been estimated that's needed to protect vulnerable communities and nations. I think we're up to 149 commitments or pledges to the UAE's Declaration on Climate and Health. And we've got, I think, 115 and counting that have committed to tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency by 2030, including Australia. So, and of course, there's the long-awaited acknowledgement that fossil fuels are responsible for man-made climate change. So that's been a long time coming, but it's on the table now.
This is really a global collaborative effort to tackle climate change. And so what's happening at a COP is not just the very staid process of negotiating and arguing text over very late nights of negotiating rounds, but also this very active process of collaborating across organisations, across countries. Parties in Dubai agreed to include the phrase transition as a recognition that energy transition was underway and necessary to keep warming within a reasonable limit for the future of the planet. Now, early language around fossil fuel phase out was proposed and wasn't able to be passed by the negotiators. That language is obviously more powerful, but just the inclusion of this phrase transition gives us an opportunity to build, and it gives ClimateWorks in particular an opportunity to demonstrate through our evidence what a credible transition looks like. Our modelling shows clearly that for Australia to decarbonise in line with a 1.5 degree trajectory, we need whole of system change. And so focusing on how we define transition and ensuring that transition is credible and aligned to science-based outcomes is critical.
I helped organise and run an Indigenous global session within the Monash Pavilion, which actually provided a really safe space for Indigenous people from around the world to come together and have really raw and honest conversation about climate change, about sustainability, and how they really want to be involved in the just transition process. Specifically how their knowledge can be incorporated in the discussion. I was also involved in the Chitteram Action Research Program sessions, which is a really grassroots level discussion which looked at nature-based solutions, about how we can help clean up the Chitteram River, how we can also incorporate social aspects as well as technological aspects, and which really focused on community level, specifically at an international conference where sometimes that level of discussion isn't always incorporated. I think for Indigenous people, subjects such as climate change can be quite personal, especially for communities that are located in areas that are experiencing climate change a lot more quickly and a lot more difficultly than what urban areas are. And this space was also an opportunity for Indigenous people from around the globe to come together, which very rarely is actually offered, especially at international forums such as COP28.
It was fantastic that this year, for the first year, we had a dedicated health day at COP. So after 28 years, we finally get a day that really focuses minds on why health is so important to the climate change responses that we need to take. And it was really exciting at COP. There was a palpable sense of celebration that after many, many years of advocacy by groups like the World Health Organization, we'd been able to make that case. Some of the highlights for me was being able to speak with members of the World Health Organization from the Western Pacific Regional Office alongside the Minister for Health from Fiji and the Permanent Secretary from Tuvalu. The stories that they were able to tell us from the front line of climate change about the impact of storm events and cyclones and sea level rise on their ability to provide health services were really moving and really brought home to the audience how real and urgent climate change is for the health of those most vulnerable populations.
We took our work to a global stage through a range of partner pavilions and partner stages, including the Monash Pavilion, but also the Australian Government Pavilion, the Indonesian Government Pavilion, Singapore, and others.
So I think another critical component of the pavilion for us was really a chance to feature and highlight the voices of our partners. And these are critical partners that we have across the region, both Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And those will be relationships and collaborations we want to really take forward and focus on if and when a COP comes to our region for COP31.
Australia wants to hold COP31 in 2026 with our Pacific neighbours. I think that's an excellent idea because it can act as a catalyst for action. But if we want to do that, Australia has to recognise that the emissions that we are creating harm overseas.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us here at MSDI are committed to staying involved in the COP process. It's clear that a lot more needs to be done. One of the main roles that we see that we would play would be to create a platform and an even larger microphone for the need, the opportunity, the solutions that exist in our region and with our regional partners.
COP31 presents an Olympic moment for Australia. It's a period where we can take the new energy towards climate change mitigation here in Australia. We can share our expertise with the region and we can stand on the global stage and demonstrate what's possible in collaboration with the rapidly industrialising countries of the ASEAN region.
I think looking forward, I'm really hoping that we continue to bridge the gap between grassroots community level and the national, international discussions. I think not only do we need to make the connections, but we also need to provide a pathway for people on the ground to even be a part of conferences such as COP28. We need to start really prioritising that and the minority voices. But I think we also need to look at now implementing solutions and really making them practical and feasible and realistic and making sure that all the stakeholders involved are brought along in the process.